Hi Vogue, I'm Ruth E. Carter, and this is my life and looks. School Daze. School Daze was directed by Spike Lee, but it was my first movie. First movie ever. Right here we have Giancarlo Esposito and Tisha Campbell. He's wearing a fraternity jacket. It's like the bomber jacket style. He has a bulldog embroidered on the chest. It says dog or die. I remember seeing Spike write dog or die on a little notepad and send it to me and said, this is what goes on the Gamma's Letterman jacket. I came out of the HBCU experience, so it was the perfect first film. So let's see what's next. Oh my goodness, I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. I'm Gonna Get You Sucka we shot in Los Angeles with Keenen Ivory Wayans. This is Damon Wayans and Kadeem Hardison. They did a lot of acrobatics with their costume where they fell down the steps, and it was really a fun experience. I'm Gonna Get You Sucka was kind of like a spoof on blaxploitation films. We had Mr. Big, we had Fly Guy. We had these great names and these great characters that really stemmed out of the blaxploitation era. Even the concept of overgold, where you die because you're just wearing too many gold chains. It was funny. And it was where we were at. I feel like we were getting out of an era of stereotypes and blaxploitation and really having fun with it and making fun of it. Seinfeld. I was the costume designer for the pilot of Seinfeld. Jerry was like, come by and pull some stuff out of my place, for me to wear. I remember saying, wow, everything is really organized and clean and neat, for a guy who is kind of like a sports guy. I remember doing the glasses for George and him coming into his fitting and saying to me, I'd like to wear glasses, I'd like to have some wire rim glasses. And I had just finished doing Malcolm X, and some of the props and things I still had. And I did have a pair of wire rim glasses that Denzel wore, and I gave him to him to try on. He put them on. He was like, yeah, I like this. This is it. Kind of was my Easter egg for years that actually George was wearing Malcolm X's glasses. Turning the page. Woo! Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee. And this was going to take place in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, New York City. We are very much a part of the Brooklyn community on every film with Spike. So doing a film like Do the Right Thing really was a love letter to Brooklyn and to what the community does when they come together, as the Korean markets and the Italian pizzeria. And Spike really wanted to write a protest film, and he wanted to show what happens when the Korean grocery comes into the neighborhood. Well, how does the neighborhood feel about them being there? And, what that racial tension created, by the end of the film. We went from July to September, and so the temperatures change on the East Coast. So it was quite rigorous that summer, but we were always very conscious of the community and how to tell the story of the community. So we had Radio Raheem, and we have him in this Bed-Stuy Do or Die t-shirt. And that was actually painted by a local Brooklyn artist, Nasha. There were so many elements like that in the film. You see the car wash, he has a leather lanyard, he's wearing like a leather necklace, he has his Jackie Robinson Dodgers shirt on. So, that was the Spike Lee that I began to work with, who was very intentional, knew exactly what he wanted, would bring things, in that other people would wear either. He dictated who wore what tennis shoes too. So the Jordans on Buggin' Out was definitely written in the script, but also chosen, the style chosen by Spike Lee. Leon and the Five Heartbeats. It was Robert Townsend who was the director. And Robert was also one of the actors in the 5 Heartbeats. He was Duck. They had all kinds of tricks in this film. They had the costume that breaks away and they're in this spacesuit underneath, and we had to dress all of these background in the 1960s. It was the first time that I had done a period piece for film. I loved doing period work in theater, especially because you got to do the research and make some of the images that you see in the research come to life. We're going to go from Robert Townsend's 5 Heartbeats to Malcolm X. This was a full experience for me. I got called by Spike Lee. He said, don't think about winning awards. Don't think about the Oscar or anything like that. Just do a good job. And actually, it just made sense. You know, it was such a big project. It was such an important project to tell the life story of Malcolm X. I knew that he had an experience in prison in Massachusetts. And I'm from Massachusetts, so I felt like maybe I could write the Department of Corrections and see his file. They gave me a date to come by, and they sat me in a cubicle, and files of his letters, of his medical records, of his whole entire experience in Massachusetts was sat right in front of me. I would actually get to know the man, you know, behind the face a lot better. I could make decisions on clothing choices because I would know him better. That was the springboard to the whole experience of working with Spike Lee, working closely with Denzel Washington. I really wanted to support Denzel's performance during that time. Turning the page. Tina Turner, What's Love Got to Do with It? Starring Angela Bassett as Tina Turner. Angela has been such a gift to me. We have gone on a journey and a half together. You know, seeing someone that committed, you become as committed. And this dress in particular was very special because Tina Turner was around when we created this dress. And she actually brought a CD cover to me with the picture of her in this dress. And she said, can you create this for Angela? And of course I was excited, but it was filming the next day. You know, my team was, you know, ready up for the challenge, you know, probably pulled an all-nighter to get this leather dress done exactly the way it looked on the CD cover that Tina Turner gave me. And so that next morning I'm at base camp and Tina Turner is walking across base camp and she looks over at me and she's got her wig on a wig head and she's heading towards Angela Bassett's trailer. And she says, meet me over there at Angela's trailer. And I opened the door and there was Tina Turner sitting back with Angela Bassett between her legs, sitting cross-legged on the floor, and Tina was brushing her hair, getting it prepared for her wig. And I remember looking at that and thinking that she was passing on a crown. It's a memory that I have personally that, and an image that I'll never forget. We did the story of Ty Cobb. I had been nominated for Malcolm X, and now Hollywood was taking notice that there was a costume designer out there that could do period epic films. We made all of these uniforms, and it was really hard to find a material that looked like wool but wasn't as heavy or as hot as wool, because the uniforms back then were boiled wool. I felt like I was a little bit of an underdog, you know. I'd come out of a lot of independent films with Black filmmakers, and here I was working with Ron Shelton on Ty Cobb. It was like way outside of like what my normal film family was like. And Ron really embraced me, made me feel right at home. But Tommy was a consummate actor, and you know, he embraced the fact that I was this, you know, Black girl working on this film. You know, he was tough on the crew, and most of the time the ADs would give me the sides to bring into his trailer. I would be welcomed into Tommy Lee Jones's artistic realm. Rosewood, the story of a black township that was completely burned down, like the Black Wall Street and so many others. It was directed by the late John Singleton, my brother. It was another period piece. It was the early 20s. And Don Cheadle and Ving Rhames were the two male stars. Again, I got to explore many details about period clothes. Also, the aging process. Aging and dyeing was my thing. I was an ager dyer in the theater, so when I got to a project like this, I felt like I knew exactly how to paint the clothes, because people don't realize that you can't just take something and put it on screen from a store or right from the sewing machine. You actually have to put the life in it, and the life that goes into it is from aging and dyeing. Baps starred the late Natalie Desselle, my buddy, and my other buddy, Halle Berry. My favorite scene is the scene in the bathroom at the bidet. And I read that in the script, and I read how they couldn't control the water. They were trying to turn the spigots off, and they just got even more erratic. So I thought, well, yeah, probably Halle Berry needs to have a rubber suit. So not only can she not control the spigots, but she can't control how slippery the whole room becomes as the water goes everywhere. So we created this orange latex unitard. It was really, I think, successful to have that jumpsuit in that scene with all the water, and every time I watch it, I crack up. I worked on Amistad with Steven Spielberg, Anthony Hopkins, and Djimon Hounsou. I remember the interview. I walked into Amblin over on the Universal lot. Steven was shooting Jurassic Park at the time, and he was coming over during his lunch break. And I remember him coming in the room. There was no script. I couldn't read the script. He looked at me and he said, "I really loved your work in Malcolm X." And it really made me feel really comfortable talking to him, about what I knew about Amistad and what I could bring to the story. And he said, "Well, take the script home and read it, and let me know if you want to work with me on this." And I thought to myself, I could probably call him back from the parking lot. It was a special film for me because I got to go to the opera houses in Italy, to see all of the collections in London, and really I had the opportunity to do my best work. Love and Basketball. Gina, she's a female director. Her story was deeply personal. Working with Sanaa, the great Sanaa Lathan, is a wonderful actor, as well as Omar Epps. We went on this story about, a young athlete in Los Angeles, and it's one of the great love stories, I think, in Black cinema. Shaft. Samuel L. Jackson. You see Vanessa Williams in the background, and he's got on that laser cut Armani jacket. When Richard Roundtree was Shaft in the 70s, it's that black leather trench coat that he wears coming out of the subway, and you hear the music and you see him walking across the street. It became iconic. So we knew that we were going to collaborate with a fashion house, and that one was Giorgio Armani. We were also flown to Milan to his fashion show in his apartment. And I kept thinking, how is he having a fashion show in an apartment? But I didn't realize it was the apartment building. And there was a floor that was dedicated to the show. So the experience of doing the film, collaborating with the late great Giorgio Armani is something that I will hold dear for always. Selma, directed by the great Ava DuVernay. Really great actors like David Oyelowo and Coleman Domingo. The set was the marches. The marches became the set. Hundreds of people came into the wardrobe department every day and got dressed in their marcher attire. And thankfully, there was a lot of documentation on the Selma to Montgomery March, so we could use, our Ebony magazines and all of those things that I have collected over the years to really see what kinds of articles of clothing they wore to march in. And so it was really a great experience to really examine all of that research and bring it to life here in this film. the late Chadwick Boseman. We really wanted to honor Africa and give the Panther suit a signature. So there's this veining that goes throughout the suit that has a lot of Wakandan language, honor, dignity, all of these great phrases, as well as a medallion in the center of the chest. But what I'm really most proud of is the surface Okavango Triangle. We named it the Okavango Triangle for the Okavango River that travels from north to south on the coast of Africa, and it means the family. And you see a lot of the triangle shape in the artistry. So it's the mother, the father, the child. And so we actually created this surface texture, but also this story along the body of this suit. Around it envelops him, it wraps him, and he is wrapped in Africa. Yellowstone, Kevin Costner. Taylor Sheridan called me wanting me to work with him on Yellowstone. And I didn't think that I had the energy for it, but he said, you know, cowboys want to be cool. They like hip hop. And he was just rattling off the different kind of genes and all the different ways that Hollywood has depicted cowboys, but the way it is in real life is a real difference. So he intrigued me with that. And I went on to Utah to do the first season of Yellowstone with Kevin Costner and a really, really great cast. After working with Ryan Coogler on the Black Panther and the sequel Wakanda Forever, he said that he had written a script that he told me about, and it was a period piece. I couldn't believe it. I just didn't expect this story. 1920s story about vampires. He immediately talked to me about the color palette, that Smoke would be in blue and Stack would be in red. One wears a tie and a pocket square. One really doesn't care about a tie. He's got a holster and a gun under his jacket. Ryan respected the fact that I came up with Spike Lee, but Delroy Lindo was also in this film, and he was in Malcolm X. And I remember during our camera test, Ryan just walking away from the set and the camera. We're kind of in the dark in the background behind camera, and he comes over to Delroy and I, and we're just having a conversation, and he just hugs us, and he says, I'm feeling so honored right now that the two of you are here. And it was a beautiful moment. It took us by surprise. You had to stop and think about it for a moment and say, you know, here we're giving a new young filmmaker our wealth of knowledge and experience, and we're bringing it to his film, Tiana Taylor and the Met Gala. I can't tell you how much fun this costume was to make. And just the thought that it was going to walk the carpet. It was actually going to open the carpet at the Met Gala. It started with a zoot suit, and we said, oh, it's got to have the stripes and it's got to have the right proportions. And then she says, and then I want to do a cape. And so we created the cape. I did illustrations for it. And then on the day of, she said, I need a do-rag. So we created a do-rag that was part of the cape. When someone is wearing a zoot suit, you almost get permission to be bigger than big, because that is the origin of the suit. Thank you, Vogue, for this wonderful opportunity to give you a little snippet of my life in looks.